The AllReady project, like probably many of your projects out there, is a bit of a hodgepodge of different JavaScript frameworks. In the AllReady case, there's a lot of Knockout being used. We'd like to refresh that and bring it up to date with a little bit of React. Let's mash on that. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Asp.Net Monsters. In today's episode, we're gonna hack a little bit on the fabulous AllReady project.
So AllReady is it's a project that is written by volunteers. It's an open source project. It serves for disaster preparedness campaign support. It helps organizations to organize volunteers and help mobilize them and effectively use resources and things like that. But because there's been over 100 contributors from over 40 countries, we just kind of get into a space, and it's 2 years old too. And I mean, in JavaScript years, how many years is that, Simon?
I don't know, like 300?
Right. So it's like 300 JavaScript years old, and it was built using React and a mix of, I think there's some JavaScript here and there. Sometimes it's in the same file as the view. Sometimes it's scattered elsewhere around. And part of what we're trying to do now on the project is to try and help organize some of that JavaScript, modernize the framework, and just kind of make it something that's still attractive to the open source community to contribute to. So, Simon, we're bringing you in to show us the best practices. And
Okay, well, I can show you some practices. I don't know if they're the best ones.
You can do the practices that you demonstrate to the best of your ability, and we'll call that Simon's best practices.
Even then, I don't know if I would have said best to it, but sure, let's take a run through it here and see what we can do. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk a little bit about why we would even bother getting rid of Knockout at all, and why we would choose React as a replacement. So I think the first thing to look at is that there's not really any problem with Knockout. I say that having written a huge article, which might actually have been titled "Everything That Is Wrong with Knockout." So
it's from an unbiased opinion then.
Yeah, I would not start a new project nowadays using Knockout. That being said, I think it's fine for the sorts of interactions that we're doing on this site. So it's an MVC site, but it's primarily a server-side MVC site. So we don't have a lot of API calls. We don't have like single-page application stuff. What we are mostly doing is just like, if there's a complicated control on the page, we're using some Knockout or something like that around it to make the interactions a little bit cleaner and easier on the client side.
It's basically to take care of any data-related things where we've got some user experience that's more than just select something from a drop-down box.
That's right. So that's kind of where we're shooting from right now, and Knockout is kind of working, but we want to keep things fresh and try and attract people from the community. And it's embarrassingly easier to do that by saying, "Hey, look at the cool new stuff that we've got over here. You want to learn React? This is the place to do it." So anyway, let's dig in here. So this is a page we're going to be looking at here, and
I think one other thing too to talk about really quickly is you'd mentioned that we're doing this, and I mean, regardless of what your thoughts are on Knockout, we're picking a new JavaScript front end. Why not something like Angular instead of React?
Right, that's a good point. So there's basically, in my mind, like 4 big players maybe at the moment that are cool JavaScript frameworks. So there's Angular 4, I guess it's Angular 5 as of recording. There's Aurelia, there is Vue, and there is React. So those 4, I kind of divide them into 2 and 2. So Vue and React I'll have on one side of my mind, and Aurelia and Angular I'll have on the other side. And the difference between those is how opinionated they are and how much they provide for you out of the box. So React and Vue are ostensibly view engines and nothing more than that. So they're just like templating engines. So they are not really conceptually that much different from something like Knockout, whereas Angular and Aurelia are like big opinionated solutions. So if you're looking for, I want to have dependency injection, I want to have something that wraps the HTTP calls. I want to do all of these other things. Then Angular
authentication and authorization and routing and all of those things.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff in those frameworks, and you can get all of that with Vue and React, but it tends to be that you're piecing stuff together. So while there is the Angular router, there are, I don't know, 100 different React routers you could choose from. And those same React routers probably work on Vue as well, and so forth. But because we're just replacing like small parts of a page, having something like Angular it's too big. Like, we don't want to build an entire single page application. And what's worse, we don't want to build like 20 single page applications, one for each page on our site. We just want, some little bit of JavaScript on controls.
Right, and Angular are application frameworks. They're not just we're trying to do something on a page where it's actually it's a broader scope than just the single page or a single view. Yeah.
Okay, so the control that we're going to take a look at here is this one down here called My Skills, and it's just basically a list that you can pick different skills that you have. So it's got deletes, it's got adds, and then just a little drop down, and it's got a little thing that you can hover over with a witty comment.
Right, and so this is, in the context of this application, what it does is it allows users to say, hey, these are the things that I can do, and then down the road how that will be used is there's an organizer who will try and align a user, a volunteer, with something that needs to be done. So this allows users to self-declare, hey, I'm CPR certified, and they can add that to their skill set. And so this control is basically just letting them add those skills or remove them, and that's kind of the extent of it.
Perfect. Okay. So we're going to try and recreate this. So this is a bunch of knockout right now. So let's go and dig this out and so you can find it. So this is in, let's move your head out of the way, James. Manage and index. Just taking forever to open. Okay. So towards the bottom of this file, we have a bunch of JavaScript. So this is the knockout stuff right here, and it controls a bunch of stuff associated with skills here. So you can see that we have a lot of data bind attributes. So this is the way that knockout works, is it provides data bind, and then there's a bunch of stuff in here describing what gets bound. So in this case, the name is going to be bound to control name. $index, that must be a function. The options is the available skill sets, the option text is name, and so forth. So there's a few things in here that get bound, like there's a delete button in here too, which has a data bind on the click action. So this is how you do interaction. And then we just want to delete the skill. So all of that is our knockout, and we're going to transition this control to some React. So I don't like scripts being inline on the page necessarily, and the reason for that is basically CSTS, so the content security headers that you can have. So you can say, please don't execute any scripts that are embedded on a page, and that brings you to the point of like you can completely defend yourself against cross-site scripting attacks by doing that. But I think we're going to end up maybe with just a little bit of script on the page still, and we'll address that at some point in the future.
So before we start slicing it up, can we have a look at that page again? And when you're thinking about breaking this component down, there's the drop-down box, which has some options in it. Mm-hmm. There's a little question mark, the little pop-up help text. Then there's the delete button and the add button. How do you, what are you thinking of when you're trying to break that down to kind of slice it up?
So I'm thinking about a couple of different things. I'm thinking about reusability, are there other places on the site that I'm going to want to drop down that does this? Are there other places on the site that I'm going to want a delete button that is styled in this way? Same thing with these pop-up text things. And also from a testability point of view, I want to see what is a good boundary of stuff that I want to test. I don't want my components to be so big that they're a pain to test, but I don't want them to be so small that I've got hundreds of them and they're all over the place. So I think when we split this up, I'll probably end up doing, I don't know how we'll end up, maybe, certainly this whole thing will be a component, and then within it, maybe the delete button will be a component. This drop down might be a component too, although it doesn't really have any special interactivity on it, so I might just leave it the way it is. But let's go and build it. So I'm going to start by going and installing some. Sorry, I'm setting my windows a little bit here. So I'm going to go and install a bunch of React stuff. So I'm installing React DOM. So React DOM is the part of React that allows you to interact with the browser. And I'm going to install the types for this stuff. And hopefully I spelled everything correctly here. So let's go and run that and hope. So that usually takes about 20 or 30 seconds to run. So we'll let that run in the background and we'll pop over to Visual Studio here. And we'll start building up our site. So we have in our www root a TypeScript folder. We also have a JavaScript folder, but let's put this in the TypeScript folder here. And I'm going to add a folder called controls eventually. Let's Visual Studio has stopped crashing. Alright, I'm going to add a folder called new folder. And then independently from that, I'm going to stop running, I guess, and rename it. Can't rename while we're running. Controls, and we'll call this maybe a skill picker. And let's do a new item here. And we will have Typescript. So we're going to add a Typescript JSX file here.
Okay, so we have, people are probably familiar with the TS files already for TypeScript. TSX is a special file type.
Right, so the TSX is kind of a hybrid between TypeScript and JSX, JSX being the sort of language that React is written in. So it's a hybrid of HTML and JavaScript, or in our case HTML and TypeScript. So it's a little bit crazy if you haven't seen it before, but basically we're mixing our markup with our JavaScript, which seems odd to begin with, but actually works out pretty nicely, I think, because it keeps kind of everything centralized in the same place. So React is, like, it kind of provides you a different way of thinking about how you divide up your units on a page. Like typically, and even if you look at something like MVC, you can see that we have controllers and we have models and we have views, and it's really very horizontally sliced into different things. And what we'd like to do with these controls is we want to like centralize a model, a view, and a controller all together in one file. So you're still going to have like the same amount of code in each one of these things, but it's just a different way of looking at it depending on which way you're looking at it. So this is closer to what you would see back in the old days when we had web forms and we had a bunch of user controls that we were building up. So hopefully the skill picker, if there's anywhere else on the site that we need a similar sort of interface, we can just drop it in there and reuse it. Okay, so we've got the skill picker in there, and I'm going to go and take a look at our TS config file. I think there might be some changes that we need to do inside of that. So the TS config file is what's used to configure how TypeScript runs, basically. So we're going to need to add a line here to do our TSX file. So this is the files that it's including when it's doing its compilation. And I'm going to change our target up to ES6, just because ES5 is kind of getting a little long in the tooth, and pretty much all of the browsers that we're targeting in this case have ES6 support in them. So this brings in nice things like a bunch of additional stuff on array and so forth. And then I'm going to add this line here for JSX. And I'm going to tell TypeScript that we're using React. So there's three options here. Preserve, React, and React Native. Preserve is not going to do any post-processing of the TSX files. So you'll still need another step like a Babel or something afterwards to do the final processing to get React code, like pure JavaScript out of it. React is what we're going to do, so it's going to do our processing all the way through, and React Native is if you're building a native React application for like a mobile. So I think that's everything I need there. I'm also gonna go and hack a little bit at our gulp file. So we're doing our builds using gulp, which could be good, could be bad, depending on where you're coming from. I'm gonna just update a couple of paths here. So I want to run this on our TS and our TSX files. And I think there might be an update I wanted to do down here to this watch command too. So I would like to just build TypeScript as a result of this. I only want to watch TypeScript files, I think, for now. So we might come back and revisit that at some later point. But I just
now the watch task allows us to keep iterating over the script without having to recompile the application over.
Right. Well, basically what it does is I'm gonna go over here, check the right folder again, so I do gulp watch. So what it's going to do is the first time through, it's going to run, I guess, whatever dependencies are of this, which is nothing. And then it's going to monitor all of our TypeScript files, and anytime it sees a change, it's going to fire off build TypeScript. So right now it's not doing anything, but if we were to go over to our TSX file here, and just do something like console.log, hi. Say that it should recompile it unless we've messed it up. Okay, good. So we recompiled it.
Kicked it in.
The way we have this configured, we should have just added a couple of files underneath this one. So it goes ahead of this skillspicker.js and a map file for us as well. So we'll clear that out, and we will head over to our layout file. And we're going to pull in our React here. We're just going to do a brutally simple approach here, so we're just going to add it. And I think we might actually have to run the lib build. Oh, didn't like that. So what do we miss here? We must be missing maybe a React DOM or something here. Did that install work properly? Know if our install of all that React stuff actually worked. I have to drop to the file system here and take a look.
Some bonus troubleshooting here as we go.
Yeah, it's always nice when everything works perfectly right off the bat, but it's not the way we do things around here. So our node modules, React. Oh, we got React and React DOM. So it seems like it should have worked. It might just be that we need to run the gulp to copy the lib files over. I'm interested that it seemed to run okay. So let's just do a build. It's supposed to build everything. Still doesn't like that, huh? This looks to me like... Oh, you know what the problem here is? The version of TypeScript we are using. So I think we're using a slightly outdated version of TypeScript. Let's take a look at that and see in our packages. .json. I suspect that we're on 2.2.1 here. So let's bump that up to the latest.
So there's previously some TypeScript on this project, but it didn't have anything to do with React, and it was just kind of actually sitting there. I think here there's not a lot of TypeScript actually in use on the site, but that's the older version, and so you're just bumping it up to 2.6.1 now, I think is what's going to.
Yeah, so there's probably some generic stuff that was added in TypeScript that the TypeScript definition file looks like it relies upon, and because we're running an older version of TypeScript, we didn't get that. So let's try that again and see if life is better. I might have to upgrade gulp TypeScript as well. Doesn't look like it. Looks like it might be okay. Alright, great. So I'm going to kill this and just switch over to that gulp watch. Spell gulp correctly as well. Okay. So we were going to go and add gulp to our layout file here. And I'm going to cheat ever so slightly and copy and paste this in because they're kind of long. All right, so we're putting in React development and React DOM development. And we'll want to add that down here at some point due to our staging and production too, but we can leave that for later. This is all we need right now. And then I'm going to build this out in parallel so that we have the old version, the knockout version, to compare this to as we build it. So let's go and do that. So we're going to want a new script tag here. And we're going to set the source on that to be Typescript /controls/skillspicker.js. Boy, it's nice that it does that for you, huh? And then we're also going to want to pull in the data that's necessary. So the way that Knockout has done it here is we've serialized stuff as part of the view. So we've used Razor here to serialize out the selected skills and the associated skills. So we can do the same thing here for our version. So
yeah, and down the road, one of the goals might be to actually pull that off of an API instead of inlining all of the JSON, right? Especially when you just start looking at things that need to be filtered and whatnot. You don't want to return 10,000 rows from the database and dump it into a JSON string that gets output on the page.
Yes, that's probably true. I mean, the nice thing about doing it in this way is that you only have to make one server trip for this, so it's going to be there for you right away. You don't have to do that HTTP call out. Okay, and so these are, I might have this all the way around. This might be current skills, and then I have another variable here for the skills. Pull that over. Space it out all nice. Okay, so that should now just serialize these out to a location on the page, and we should be able to gain access to that in our skills picker. So we're gonna cheat again a little bit here, and we're gonna tell Typescript that those two variables that are declared on the page, they just exist. Just assume they're magically there. So to do that, we just do declare skills and declare skills. Okay, so that should allow us to kind of build stuff out and it'll work. So let's just make sure that all of this is working. I think we could run all the rest of this live in the browser. I don't think we need to rebuild, so let's take the hit right now of starting up.
And then after this, it'll just be the gulp watch task that is changing the TypeScript in the background. And then also, because we're just changing our view, our CSHTML, we don't have to worry about any controller side changes. So it'll just, Visual Studio, our debugger is just going to let us keep running without actually having to recompile everything.
Yep, hopefully. There was a time.
That's the dream. That's the dream.
Asp.Net core was going to just compile everything in memory.
Oh, the good old days.
Yeah, I miss that dream. Alright, well, while this is chugging along and starting up for some reason in a completely separate browser instance, I'm going to start adding a little bit of TypeScript here to this class. So I happen to know that what comes back off the server basically matches this contract here. So current skills is just an ID. An available skill is an ID, a name, and a description. So I'm going to put in TypeScript classes for these. So it's going to help with IntelliSense. It's going to help with making sure that I don't do anything stupid as we go through building this out. Well, it's going to help as much as possible with that. Let's see, that's up and running. Let's go and log in and get back to that page. And we'll just hope that Chrome has remembered my login and password. And I'll just go look it up. Okay, we have to go look it up. That's okay, because we have it in a super secure and secret location in the app settings. And the password, ever instructive, you can change your password. Okay.
We're going to have to roll that password now that you showed everyone, Simon.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. Alright, go. I don't want to say the password. Yeah. No. Okay, so hopefully we won't have any JavaScript errors here. Look at, I don't like the way that there's JavaScript errors here. Okay, so we had some problems loading React. So let's go see why that is, because that should have been copied over when we copied our library files over. And then where does that show up? Somewhere in wroot.lib, I think. Yeah, I agree. Those do not exist there, so I don't know what we didn't do properly in our gulp file. Built that. I was supposed to copy that over. Those libraries are explicitly listed, and I might need to go and add them. What is that Typescript file? Gulp file, rather. What does libtask do? I can't find the libtask key. Okay, so this looks like it actually pauses the package.json. I bet you when I added these, I forgot to pass in a save flag. So we can go back and do that, I guess. So this should add them to my package file.
The save option just updates that the package.json, right?
Sorry, I managed to yank my headphones out there. What were you saying?
Oh, I was just saying the save option just updates your package.json.
That's right. All right, we'll let that run for a second. And I guess while that's running, we can go and set up another thing in our index file. So we want to attach this new set of React functionality to some place inside of our application. And to do that, we want to set basically a mount point. And in React parlance, that's just kind of like where React is going to put this data on the page. So we're going to go and create this little div here called mount point. Now this could be called anything, but we're just going to use mount point for fun. So I'm going to put it right in here. So this is the old picker right here. And this is going to be the new one that gets slotted in right here. In theory, the resulting JavaScript or HTML should be pretty similar.
We're just giving a container, like, so we're going to go off now and write some script and write the template. We're just giving a container for React, like it's a target container where it's going to render its HTML. It's going to render its template, do its data binding and all that.
So one of the first things we'll do when we're doing this React stuff is we will attach React to that point in the DOM. Assuming this ever finishes. Building.
It's a trivial change to our view, but it has non-trivial implications, I guess, down the road.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so that is built. We'll turn the watch back on. Hopefully over here, when this reloads, all of these nasty arrows will go away. When it reloads. Okay, well, I don't see any errors, except just for this one. So this one can be ignored. This is trying to call out to App Insights, but we just don't have a key set for our development environment. So We're going to see that, but don't even worry about it for now. Alright, so let's go into our skills picker and start writing some stuff. I said we were going to set up a mount, so let's go and do that right away here. So we're going to do react dom.render, and we're going to call our control skill picker. Like so, and this looks a little bit weird, but we're just passing HTML into this. Skills, and label skills. Close that, and then we're going to give it the mount point. Document.query selector. So you could use jQuery here. We do have jQuery on the site because it's a Bootstrap template, but we'll try and avoid using it if we can. Alright, and this is going to be upset for me because I don't have a skill picker class here. So we're going to go and create one of those. And this is going to be our first component. Component. So our component in React is like anything on the page. Basically, this is the object of the React world. Props and skill props. So I'm giving it two different types here. This first one is what the properties are that's going to be passed in, and the second one is what the state is going to be. And I'm going to give it the same structured object for both of these. And let's go and write that object. So props killer D-killer.
That looks more like a rapper name.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's my secret rapper name.
DJ D-Kill.
Skill Alright, so that should be enough to make all of the angry red squiggly bits go away. So good, that's all good, that's good, that's good, that's good. Everything is happy now, and we'll just prove out that it works here. So let's add just a quick render function. So this is like the, oh gosh, I was going to say this is the paint function, but that's pretty outdated. It's like a Java reference, but this is what's going to be called when we draw the component on the screen. And then we'll just create like a div here. All right. So we're just going to render out an empty div. Maybe we should put something in here. Hello, React. Because we're so creative. Name it.
It's like the British spelling of hello, though, so we'll know that it's really, yeah, that we'll know it's really working. There we go.
Alright, so I'll watch task as we compile that. We should be able to go over here and refresh, and that'll show up. Maybe. There we go.
There it is.
So that's brilliant success. And you could probably stop right here, really, if you
Yeah,
wanted to just show off.
Yeah, every project that's as far as it needs to go. So we're bootstrapped. We're ready now to start moving some of this functionality in.
Yeah.
So looking again at the code, you got line 26 there. We're basically saying, in second parameter that you're passing in there is the first one is the skill picker component. The second one is the target that we had previously identified, mount point. So React DOM.render, we're putting a skill picker control. We're going to render a skill picker control, and you're passing in these parameters, or I guess these are the attributes that you're going to pass it in, and you're going to throw it into that mount point. The skill picker is defined at line 18, which is a React component, and then we get this opportunity to render some content out, and that's what that render method is. Okay. So that's just invoked by the framework. That's just invoked by React. We don't have to do anything special to make that happen.
Nope. So everything now is kind of like there for us to start building on. So the next thing we want to do is we want to use these two parameters that we've passed in. I'm going to add those to the state. So in React, a state is kind of a set of private information that is held by a component. So it holds ownership over that, and it can manipulate it and change it. And the stuff that is rendered to the screen is updated based on the state. So what happens is if I make a change to the state, and in order to make a change to the state, I actually have to call like set state. Then React will notice that the state has changed, and it will recall the render function, which will build up an HTML tree. And React has already an idea of what's on the page. And so it diffs the virtual DOM, which is what render returns, with the real DOM, and then it does updates based on that. So you're never going to redraw an entire control. You're going to just update properties on it, basically. So it's pretty nifty. I actually think it's pretty much how everything works nowadays. Like all of the client-side frameworks work in the same way. But React was the first one to do it like that. So I'm going to add a constructor here. Props, and it's going to bring in skill picker props. And I'm going to use super props, which is like, if you really want to congratulate someone, like you give them super props. If TypeScript is working, it should be upset that I'm doing this, yeah, because the contract hasn't been satisfied by this empty object, so we'll have to do available skills, available skills, start skills. And the old Sun keyboards from back in the day for Solaris, there used to be a props key. Nobody ever knew what it did, but anytime somebody did something good, we go to their computer and press it for them. Okay, so I think that's probably all we need right now in the constructor. I'm going to build this up. So let's go and render out some of our stuff on the page. So we can take our render function here, and we still want to have a div in there, I think. And I think what we'll probably want to have is a div with a little bit of a class on it.
Well, it is bootstrapped, so you're never going to run into any trouble with adding more divs.
This is entirely accurate. So we're going to give it a class name. So one of the gotchas for doing React is that you can't just say class, because it's kind of like a JavaScript keyword, and we're in a JavaScript file. Mind blown. So you have to call it class name. And this is going to be a call MD10, I think it is. So that's just a bootstrap sort of column. And to this, we're going to add temps. And then we'll go and define what our contents are. So to start with, we've got a couple of things on the screen. We've got that drop-down box, and let's just start with making a drop-down box here. So in our drop-down box, we have a bunch of different options, and if we take a look at how this thing works right now, it actually lets you choose the same thing multiple times, and then there's just some validation down here. So I would like to make it so people cannot screw up by default. It would be nice to kind of like guide them down a good path instead of just giving them an error message. So first thing we'll do is we'll build up our options here. This is going to be this.state.available skills. We're going to filter those skills a little bit here. So we're going to say this.state.current skills.find y.id is equal to x.id. So this filter is going to remove from our list of options anything that's already been selected. So in our example here, if we would add a new box, because we've got these three selected, the only one available to us would be MD Surgeon. Okay, and then we're going to map this out, and this is where things start to get really cool, I think. So from this, we're going to return an option, and we set the key to x.id, look at that, like completion offered there for me. So that's nice. We'll make the value here also equal to x.id, and we'll put in x.name here, and then we'll put down option. So this looks a little bit strange because we're actually rendering out like HTML as part of JavaScript, but you'll get used to it once you write more React. And the key here is another React gotcha that anytime you're rendering a list of things, every item in the list has to have a key. So anytime you're rendering something inside of a loop, everything has to have a key, and that's to allow React to properly do that virtual DOM updating, so it knows which element to update and isn't updating the wrong one. Okay, so we've got our options. Let's get our contents. And we're going to do this, state current skills map. So again, we're going to do this for every single current skill. Alright, so we return a div, because we like divs. Make it a form inline, so this is another Bootstrap theme that we're going to pull in. We're going to make sure we set that key name. Skill. ID, something like that. There we go. Div down here. So this should render out, right now if we were to go and save it, but let's go and save it, we should render out a bunch of divs, but they're just getting empty. So we just put like skill.id just to make sure that we haven't messed anything up. It's important to keep feedback cycles short so that when you screw stuff up, you know kind of what it was you screwed up. Alright, so this is looking good. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what do we want to have? It's actually one more than I had anticipated. I think it would be 3. 1, 3, 2, 4, in fact. Interesting. Well, we will explore that, I guess, as we come to it. So let's add a select here, not a skill. And again, we're going to put a class name on it. It's going to be form control role. And we'll set a default value on it. So this is what's going to be selected when you start it up. Current skill.id. And we're going to do toString on that because once it gets rendered as HTML, it's going to be a string as opposed to a number. Name, and this is a little bit weird here because we're passing this collection back to Asp.Net just as a form element. We have to name this in a particular way so that the model binding picks it up. So it's associated skills. Then we'll need to have a counter in here. We don't have a counter right now, we'll have to add that. And closing brace. And okay, so I think that is...
We'll have a look at the HTML afterwards that's generated, but this name is effectively this array notation is what allows the MVC model binding to pick up on that collection and map it back to the list of skills that we've got on the server.
Yeah, so it's a little bit odd, but that's just part of the strangeness of having to do kind of server-side and client-side rendering.
Yeah, and if you're gonna do a model binder on the server side, the reality is just that there's gonna have to be, it's one of those things that's gonna have to be opinionated. You're gonna have to say this, pass these back.
All right, so we'll put our options in here, but then we're gonna have to add a line manually here too, and the reason is that our list of skills that we're mapping to here is going to be missing one of the skills, the one that's currently selected. So because we kind of filtered it out up here in the options, we built up the options. So we need to just add the current one manually. This dot state dot available skills dot find, and we're just looking up the name of this skill basically. Current skill dot ID name, and close this option here. Really close it. Okay.
Okay, so now options in this context, you defined it at line 31. That is a callback that's going to, that map is going to, at the end of the line there, that's going to be what actually draws the rest of the options out for us in this dropdown.
Right, so the result of options is basically an array of JSX elements here. So it's going to be an array of options, and when we drop it in just like this, it just renders nicely as a bunch of options, and see if that's looking kind of the way we'd expect it to. Uh-oh. So, what did I screw up? Cannot read property name of undefined. So, it looks like skill picker JS line 20 right here. Current skill.id. So you can actually see what gets built up, react.create element. But it looks like that option one I might have messed up somewhere here. State.available skill dot find. Let's see off the top of my head what I'm doing wrong there. Skills dot find. Current skill. I don't know. Let's go stop a breakpoint in there and see what's happening. Okay, so available skills is available skills does not look right to me. Available skills looks like it's actually current skills. Do we have maybe our stuff the wrong way around? Somewhere? Did we map things incorrectly? Current skills is current skills. Current skills is current skills. So maybe right back up at our file here we mapped this incorrectly. Let's go see. Yes. So this looks like it's the wrong way around. So we can probably take this out, put it down here. This up, put it up here. Okay, so that's the reason that we had 4 things being rendered instead of 3 earlier on.
Right, when we expected 3, and then why we were missing the one that you're looking for.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, that's looking good right now. We've got our lists, they're looking pretty good. They have more things in them than I was expecting them to have, but they are getting rendered, so that's kind of good. I would still like to see why they have more options in them than I was anticipating. So I think we might be missing in here undefined comparison. Okay, that's good. So now they all only have one option in them, which is surgeon.
Other than themselves, right. I guess, right? So if you change that to surgeon, then the first one should be able to take the CPR.
Right. But right now you can see that we're not actually updating anything as a result of this. So we need to go and add a change listener or something to our component in order to get it to realize that when we've changed something in here, it has to go and update the state. So let's go and do that here. So in here we're going to do onChange. We'll do this .update. And I'm going to also add a data ID. Current skill.id. Okay. Alright, so it's happier now. And we'll have to go and add this .update function. So we'll go and add an update function here. And now we get to another little gotcha that we see sometimes in React, and that is that we need to bind these functions to the correct scope. So we can do that by just doing this .update. We're now constructed to this .update, .bind this. So that should be enough to get it so that the this that we use inside of our update function is actually the one we want. So we'll take an event into this update function, and we're going to prevent the default on this. I don't know what the default is on this, but it's usually a good idea to prevent it. It's probably not what you want to have happen. We're going to get the ID of the item here that we're targeting. -ID. So this is going to be the original value of what was in that select box. And then we're going to be able to pull in the current value of what's in that select box by taking a look at start.props current skills. We're going to find x ID is equal to the ID, and we're going to set the ID equal to parse int of e.target target value. Alright, so we should probably talk about this. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to find the existing item in our current skills collection, and we're going to change the ID on it from what its current value is to whatever the new value is that was selected in that array. And because we're using integers in our model up here, numbers, we're going to cast it back into an integer. And we'll do this.set state, and we will go and update that list of current skills. And skills is going to be equal to this.props skills. There we go. So that should give us the functionality that we wanted to over here of changing things properly. Unless we've broken something. No errors, so let's see what happens. We change it to surgeon. Yeah, look at that. Actually changes it everywhere, so now we can kind of mess around here and change.
Move it around as needed.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we are a good chunk of the way there. So we need to add 2 more pieces of functionality here. We need to add an add and a delete function. So those exist over here. So we've got these deletes and we've got add down here. So we can start maybe, well actually there's a third piece of functionality too that I'm missing, that is this little hover thing right here. So maybe we should start with that one, since that seems like it would be a pretty easy thing to add. So that is rendered as just a little icon, so we can add that. This is a span here, and we'll use a bootstrap icon for this. Circle, circle, and we'll add another couple of things to it here. So we'll add data tip equals true, and we'll add the title. So these are going to be some Bootstrap properties that we add to this to tell Bootstrap how to handle this tooltip, because it's a Bootstrap tooltip. And we'll do the same sort of select that we did up here. Find x.id current ID description and our span. So that should be pretty much everything we need to get the tool or the icon on the screen. But now we need to actually call out to Bootstrap and say, hey, can you please render a tooltip for us?
Yeah, tooltip is a JavaScript component in the Bootstrap framework, so you have to actually explicitly say, hey, make that guy a tooltip.
Right. So to do that, we're going to tie into another lifecycle, another part of the lifecycle of a component. We're going to tie into the component did mount. So this basically means that all the HTML for the component has been rendered, and we would like to make that call.
So a common pattern in Bootstrap would be to attribute your component with a class name, or your control with a class name, and just say this is a tooltip, and then at the end of the on your document AllReady, you would say use the query selector, find all of the classes, or all of the elements that have a class name of tooltip, and then assign it tooltip. Just call tooltip like you did right there. Why are you going with this component did mount instead, using this lifecycle approach?
So I'm doing it because I want to like minimize the number of calls that I'm making to this. So I want to just say on the first pass through, I want to add a tooltip to just the things that I have on this screen here. And we'll have to make another call out to this anytime we do an add. So this is only going to affect things that already exist on the screen. So you could do it with the class name. I just felt like this was easier. So I thought I saved that, didn't update. Did we have a compile error? Okay, that's good. Line 39. I have apparently broken something.
Oh, did you not close the span?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So that's good. If we were watching that, we'd be delighted because we would have seen errors occur earlier. We want errors to show up as quickly in the build pipeline as possible. All right. So there we go. That works, but if I change this to surgeon, you can see that things are weird on that particular one. So we might have to revisit that somewhere along the line here and make sure that that tooltip is in fact right again. I think it might just need another call here, like this. Nope. Okay, well, we will revisit that somewhere later along the line.
Sure, and the Bootstrap specific pieces aren't even really part of this change per se. So.
Yeah, I don't want to get too mired in those. Okay, so let's add an add link in here. So we'll render it out, and then we'll go and create it here. So add link equals null. All right, so this is a slightly odd looking pattern here. I'm going to assign this null here because I don't want to render it out all the time. If we've already consumed all of our available skills from the list, I don't want to add an add link. So if you just
not letting the users fall into that pit of failure again.
Right. So if you just set it to null, then nothing gets rendered. Yeah, you don't have to create any sort of special like hidden component or anything like that. It just won't get rendered. So let's check on this. That's state available skills length is greater than this state current skills length. So if we have any skills left over, then we can put in this add link. And that is going to be just a simple href equals nothing. And then we need an on-click for it, which is going to be called this add. We'll set a title on it too. Skill. Then the markup inside here is for a span. Class name are FA and FA plus. So this is going to render the icon for us. And this span, and put the word add in there too. There we go. So it's upset because this add doesn't exist, so we can add an add. And we'll remember right away to go up here and bind it. And then in here, let's do this .props, current skills .push, and we'll just push a brand new skill on there, but we'll try and be a little bit intelligent about what we choose. This .props, available skills, .filter. So this should be familiar by now. This state, current skills.
Since we're pair programming, I think you did a fill instead of a filter.
I did do a fill instead of a filter. Tab complete, swooped in and gotten. It's a good thing with pair programming, otherwise I'd be confused. Okay, and then we'll take the 0th element of that ID on it. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking the first skill from the available skill set that we haven't used already. And then I'm going to go and do this set state, and it's going to look very much like this one down here. And I'm going to also do this tooltip thing here. Alright, so that should add functionality. Add button, and clicking it looks like it indeed added a thing. So we've now got 4 things here, and our add button has actually disappeared, which is good. That's what we were hoping would happen.
Right on. Oh, that would actually have the nice side effect too then of every time you click add, it's just going to add the next one on the list. So if there's 3 or 4 or 9 things, you just add, you'll just run through the list and add all the skills.
Yeah, so this is actually additional functionality over and above what we have already on the site.
Sure, yeah.
So the next thing I'm going to add is a delete button to this so that we can delete things. And I'm actually going to add this as another component. We don't really need to add it as another component. Functionality could exist within here, but just to show off how we do that, let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to pass in a delete handler, which is a function that it can use. This stuff delete, and pass in current ID as current skill ID. Tag action there. So we need to do a couple of things here. We're going to have to define delete, which we'll just have as an empty function for now. And we're going to go up and do this.
Data binding.
Okay. And let's go and create a delete component. So we'll skim down to the bottom here, and we'll do another one of these classes. Component. We'll need to have some properties for it. So let's go and create another class here for properties. Some interesting spelling on this line, I see. Delete handler. function, and we'll take a current ID, which is just a number. All right. So this one should be pretty simple to do. We'll just do oops. And here we'll take in super props again, and this start handle. Okay, put in a render function. So this is going to be what renders stuff out again. And this is going to be pretty simple. Just an href again, equal to nothing. These don't actually need to be links. You can change the styling so they just look like links. But we'll do it like this. So on click, we're going to do this stuff. Handler, which we haven't written yet, but we will momentarily. And then we'll put in an icon for it. Move. And just close that span. And press the A. And then we'll add on the handler here. Again, we'll prevent the default. And start props, start delete. Okay, and we can see that it was upset there because we haven't actually gone and told it what the type of the props is yet. So there we go. And everything looks like it's building nicely. Let's go save that and see how lucky we've been over here. Alright, so I'm seeing kind of half of that one. I think we might have forgotten the word delete. Yeah. Alright, so that's looking good. Doesn't seem to do anything though. Oh, I know where that is. We haven't actually finished writing delete. Right up here.
It's just that empty, yeah.
Yeah, so we got to go and actually go and remove this thing. So this is the same sort of pattern we've done for ads, except we're going to delete it. So current skills, we're going to splice it out, which is always a fun term, I think.
It's not used enough in movies. I think they should talk about splicing more often.
Yeah. Sometimes in movies that contain horrific gene experiments, we see that. But yeah, not often enough.
Have you ever played BioShock?
No, I can say that I have.
No, if you play BioShock by yourself at night in the dark, that's awesome.
Oh.
And they talk about gene splicing, and yeah, it's pretty good stuff.
It's one of those games, huh?
Yeah.
I have a good long list of games to play and movies to watch when I retire.
Add it to the list.
Except that by the time I retire, all of this stuff is going to be so old hat. You probably won't be able to get it.
You'll need an emulator for it.
Yeah.
Well, splice BioShock into the list.
All right. And then we'll run it through again. Just an S. All right. Let's see if that works a little bit better. Reload. Hey, okay. So that's pretty much all the functionality that we had, but the styling doesn't look as nice here as it does. So
yeah,
so we can go and add some styles. So there's a couple of ways of adding styles. You can just add them right to your CSS, which is fine. But I think what we'd like to do here is we'd like to encapsulate our styles within the component itself. And you can do that pretty easily by just doing this icon style. Cool. Left. I don't know. Let's just guess, say 4 pixels maybe. We'll do the same on the right for that. And then
This is an interesting notation here because it kind of looks like CSS, but it's using camel case and not kebab case. So what's happening there?
So it's the same thing. Like basically, because this isn't a valid identifier in JavaScript, we take out the kebab stick, the skewer, as it were, and we capitalize the next letter. I don't know if there's a technical term for that. Deskewering, maybe? Dekebabbing? But it's like that bit where you take the stuff off the kebab and you put it into the pita bread and roll it out. Maybe with a little line
Automated dekebabbing.
Yeah, exactly. And now we can go and apply that in here. So I already have this one, I think is the one that I wanted on. This is style. And we can just set that to be icon style. So that should give us some of the spacing that we're looking for. And I'm also going to set a default width on the drop down. That kind of resizes itself a little bit more than I'd like it to. It's 250 pixels. And I can go here on this select. Okay. So that's looking a little bit better in terms of spacing now.
It's interesting it's dropped a font on us, eh?
Let's take a look at that and see why that is. Move your head again here, sorry. So it looks like it just has like a sans serif font here defined on the body. So let's see what we have on this one. Why that isn't the same case. Okay, so it looks like maybe we have forgotten to close something in here, because this font is coming from FA. Let's go take a look at that. So that is here. And that was on the delete, right? That was wrong. So it's actually down and out delete.
Right. Oh.
So I should probably take this and move it to here. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
So now we have basically the same thing that we had before. So we can actually go back and pull out what we had in there before in terms of this giant block of inline script. That can all disappear. We can go and find that mount point and delete everything that's kind of underneath that. And we can also go and get rid of that danger label that says that you've selected non-unique skills, because we stop people from making that mistake. And let's see if there's anything else in here we can remove. So we're looking for anything else with a data bind on it. So we have a data bind disabling the save button if you have in fact screwed up those skills, but that's not possible anymore, so we can take that out. I think that's the entire data bind in here, so it doesn't exist anywhere else. And back over. And there we go.
Okay, and as far as saving that out and
let's see. So there should be 4 when it comes back. Oh, it did, thank goodness.
there are, and delete 3 of them, and
there we go.
Comes back with 1. Awesome. A couple of other little touches that we could probably do in there, like a loading and stuff like that while it's waiting to render it and whatnot, but that can come down the road in a separate pull request. But okay, so kind of if I was going to try and recap here what we kind of went through, we broke down what was going to happen as part of kind of mapping out some controls that we would kind of extract, some components that we would kind of extract. We enabled our project to use TypeScript, or we updated the version of TypeScript we were using. We were oh, look at that, you're doing it on the fly here too.
That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah, perfect, nice. We added React and React DOM, which allows us to kind of take that, start using the TSX and use the templating engine that integrates the HTML and the JavaScript together. We started, I liked how you kept the existing UI there and you kind of started knocking off features one by one as you build the components out. I thought that was it's a good way to make sure that you're not deprecating any functionality unintentionally. So so that works. And then we broke out those components. You've got the drop down itself. You have some list management stuff that you added to kind of prevent users from falling into the pit of failure. You added the delete component and the add component in, and we kind of ended up back where we were. I think one of the kind of the things that we said offline was you took out less than 50 lines of knockout script, but we did add in 110 lines?
121 lines.
121 lines of React. So justify this for me here. Tell me what. I mean, is it just one of the consequences of moving to a different framework, or is there actually some benefit that we've got out of having more code?
So a couple of things. One of the advantages that we got for it is we added a bunch of lines here, maybe 10 lines here, that are related to TypeScript typings, and then a few more down here too. So this gives us a little bit of strength and confidence to do refactoring in the future, because our types are strongly figured out, and we'll see errors at compile time as opposed to runtime. So I wouldn't see those sorts of things. Like if I messed up something like this, I wouldn't see that until runtime. If we
in the console, knockout. Right?
And here I catch it a little bit earlier, so that's nice because that speeds us up. I think this is probably a little bit more testable than you would get with the knockout one. So this is nicely isolated, so we can test this component in isolation from the rest of the page much more easily than we could have the knockout one. And also, a lot of the HTML that we had on the page that we weren't counting against our line count, we kind of got it in here already, so it's sort of embedded inside of this component. That being said, there are a lot of moving parts in here, but the moving parts are fairly clear. Like we've got a delete, we've got an update, we've got an add, and these are all separate, distinct methods, and they're easy to see and easy to read. And if we go back over here, I'm just going to lean on our undo stack a little bit here, get back our knockout. This to me is not as readable, I don't think, as what we ended up with. Like we still have the functions here, but you sort of have to dig a little bit for them inside.
They don't stand out as explicit functions as part of a class, right?
Right. And that's another thing too, is that we have this like pulled off as a separate reusable component. So if we need to have a scope picker somewhere else, all we need to do is just add that one tag in again, and we can get React to render it and reuse this functionality in future.
Yeah, and actually there's a place where I could already envision that. Like, I mean, thinking of this project again is where we're defining some activity down the road that needs to have volunteers with certain skill sets, and we would say we want to add these skills to this activity so that we can do the matching. We're going to be able to reuse this component.
Yeah. But I mean, it's half a dozen of one, 6 of the other, I think, for this stuff. Like, yes, there's a lot more code in here, but it's probably more maintainable. It's probably a little bit faster to execute, and it's going to be better to test. But there's more of it, so you're more likely to have made a mistake in this length of code than the other length of code. But
Yeah, I think the other thing too that I'm looking at, like as you kind of map this out and walk through it, I think that there's a little bit more ceremony with things like constructors and the the binding to this to get the scope right on this and whatnot,
Mhm.
and those kinds of things. While they're extra lines of code, it's not like once you get your head around the pattern and what needs to happen there, it is just ceremony. It's not high risk code. It's not complicated things that you need to understand. And so you're adding 4 lines per class here, just to take care of your constructor or whatever. We wouldn't see that in the knockout bit. So there's another 15, 20 lines of code here in this file that are just kind of boilerplate stuff.
Yeah. To me, the real advantage is not like components this size demonstrate this a little bit, but if this was a much more complicated knockout component,
Sure.
the the thing that I think with knockout that is a hit against it is that it tends to become very messy very quickly. So a 35-line component is fine, but if we added another, say, 10 fields in there and we had interaction on the page in different ways, it would quickly get to the point where it was totally unmaintainable. And I've seen that happen numerous times in the past. And I think
It's probably
better for that.
Yeah, and I think it's worth pointing out too that we intentionally picked a small enough set of functionality here that we'd be able to convert in a short 15-minute session or whatever this was.
Yeah, it's 15 minutes. Hour and 15 minutes.
And this is probably the size of component where Knockout actually shines, is when you've got these small pieces of functionality on the UI that don't have a lot of complexity to them. It does fairly well in this space. But this isn't the most complicated thing on the site, and we're going to see as we move through the rest of AllReady and do these conversion pieces. There's probably a lot more sophisticated code that needs to be written, and it'll be easier to write, I believe, in React than it was in Knockout, or minimally it'll be easier to read and maintain and test and all those other things you've already talked about.
Right. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thanks for everything we wanted to cover. So
I think so. Simon, thanks a lot for walking us through all these bits.
no problem. So for those of you who stayed with us this whole time, salute you.
Bravo.
So we'll see everybody on the next episode of the ASP.NET Masters. Remember to like, comment, and share. We read every comment. The ones that are mean, we're a little bit sad about, but that's fine. You can be mean if you want to. And if we respond to your comment on air, we'll send you a sticker. I don't have one around here, but they're fabulous stickers. Trust me.
I do have one.
Oh, you do?
I do have one. Check this out. Right there.
Look at that. I should keep one in here. I never think to. All right, so we'll see everybody next time.
Cheers.